Wait, you're serious? Today? Of all days, you're doing this today?
Amanda, there's never gonna be a good day. I just, I don't see this working anymore.
For 10 years, Amanda Reyes had done everything right, or at least everything that was supposed to add up to right. She'd graduated with a marketing degree she'd chosen for its job prospects rather than any real passion for it, landed an entry-level position at a mid-sized advertising agency in the city the summer after graduation, and climbed steadily and carefully until she was a senior account director managing campaigns for clients whose names people actually recognized. She'd met Ryan at a mutual friend's rooftop party 4 years earlier, and their relationship had unfolded with the same quiet efficiency as everything else in her life. She used to describe her life, when people asked, as exactly where I wanted to be. It was only in the quietest moments, stuck in traffic or lying awake at 2 a.m. for no particular reason, that a smaller, harder-to-name feeling would surface, something that sounded less like contentment and more like the low hum of a life running on a track she'd built at 22 and never stopped to question. The Tuesday that ended, it all began like any other. Amanda was refilling her coffee in the break room when her director, a tightly composed woman, appeared in the doorway with an expression Amanda had learned over the years to recognize as bad news wearing a professional smile. "Do you have a few minutes?" Diane asked, and Amanda knew in the particular sinking way people always claim to know these things in hindsight, exactly what was coming. The agency had lost its 2 largest clients within the same fiscal quarter, and leadership had made the decision to restructure the account services team. Amanda's entire department, 12 people, was being eliminated, effective at the end of the week. There was a severance package. There was a folder of resources for your transition. There was absolutely nothing in the folder that explained how a person was supposed to walk back to her desk afterward and pack up 10 years of her life into a single cardboard box. She told herself, driving home that evening in a kind of numb autopilot, that this was fine, that she was good at her job, that she had savings, that she had Ryan, and that within a month or 2 she'd land somewhere else, probably somewhere better. She rehearsed the story she would tell him on the drive home, upbeat, practical, already halfway to a plan. She let herself into their apartment expecting the familiar smell of whatever he'd started cooking, the low murmur of the television, the small, ordinary comfort of coming home to someone. Instead, she found Ryan sitting at the kitchen table with 2 glasses of water he hadn't touched and a look on his face that told her, before he said a single word, that her day was about to get considerably worse. He told her, in careful, rehearsed sentences, that he didn't think he could go through with the wedding, that every decision, from the apartment to the wedding venue, had somehow already been made before he was consulted. He said the word suffocating once, quietly, and then immediately apologized for it, which somehow made it worse. She didn't tell him about the layoff. There didn't seem to be any point. She stayed exactly 11 more days in the city, submitting resumes into a market that felt, for the first time in her career, indifferent to her, before her mother called with an offer that Amanda would have rejected without hesitation a month earlier. "Come home, just for a little while, just until you figure things out." The job at Maple and Mug happened almost by accident. Amanda had gone in for coffee her second week back and struck up a conversation with the owner, a warm, no-nonsense woman who mentioned, half joking, that she was down a barista and hadn't had a decent applicant in months. Amanda, who 3 months earlier had been managing 7-figure ad budgets, laughed at the idea before she quite realized she was seriously considering it. It was humbling, in ways she hadn't expected. She burned her hand on the espresso machine twice in the first week. She got orders wrong. She found herself, more than once, standing behind the counter doing basic arithmetic on a notepad while a line of patient, familiar-faced customers waited, thinking, with a kind of disbelieving clarity, "I used to run million-dollar campaigns." It was during her 3rd week at Maple and Mug that Amanda found the camera. She sat on the floor of her childhood bedroom, turning it over in her hands, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not nostalgia exactly, but something closer to recognition, like running into an old friend she'd forgotten she missed. She started small. A few frames of the sunrise over the fields behind her parents' house, the particular slant of afternoon light through Maple and Mug's front window. She didn't tell anyone at first, but she found herself carrying the camera everywhere, and the low gray fog that had followed her since the layoff and the breakup began, almost imperceptibly, to lift. Deborah noticed before anyone else did. She found Amanda one slow Tuesday afternoon photographing the way steam curled off a cup of coffee near the window, and instead of the polite, distracted interest Amanda expected, Deborah studied the resulting photo on the camera's small screen for a long moment and said simply, "You should be doing something with this." "It's just a hobby," Amanda said automatically, the same dismissive line she'd used at 22. "Maybe," Deborah said. "Or maybe it's the thing you're actually good at, and everything else has just been you getting in your own way." She didn't push further, but she did, a week later, ask if Amanda would be willing to photograph the cafe's food and drinks for a new menu board, and then, a month after that, mentioned that her niece was getting married and needed someone affordable to shoot the engagement photos. And did Amanda have any interest? Amanda said yes before she'd fully thought it through. And something shifted the moment she was behind the camera with actual purpose again, directing two nervous, giggling 20-somethings through a golden hour session in a field just outside town. It was the first time in months, longer if she was honest, that she'd felt fully present in something, rather than simply managing her way through it. Word moved quickly in a town the size of Riverbend. One engagement shoot became 3. A local real estate agent asked her to photograph listings. The town's small community newsletter asked to feature some of her landscape work. Amanda began setting aside her tips and her small photography earnings, telling herself it was just extra cushion, not entirely ready to admit, even to herself, what she was actually building toward. It was almost 4 months into her time back in Riverbend when her old director, Diane, called. The agency, Diane explained, had landed a major new client and was rebuilding the account services team from the ground up. And Amanda's name had come up immediately as someone they wanted back, this time at a director level, with a salary nearly 40% higher than what she'd been making before. She sat with the offer for 3 days, turning it over the way she once turned over the old camera, waiting for the immediate, obvious yes she expected to feel. It never fully arrived. Instead, she found herself thinking about the particular quiet of early mornings photographing empty fields before the light changed, about the strange, unfamiliar sensation of ending a workday feeling more like herself than when it started, rather than less. She called Diane back on a Thursday evening, sitting on the front porch of her parents' house with the camera resting in her lap. "I really appreciate the offer," Amanda said, and meant it, "but I'm going to say no." Diane, clearly surprised, asked if there was anything they could adjust, as though the decision must simply be a negotiating position. Amanda found herself explaining, more honestly than she'd explained anything to anyone in years, that losing the job and losing Ryan in the same impossible month had accidentally handed her back something she hadn't realized she'd given away at 22. 6 months after moving back to Riverbend, Amanda signed a small lease on an empty storefront 2 doors down from Maple and Mug, narrow, a little run-down, with good natural light and a front window perfect for displaying prints. Deborah helped her paint the walls. Her mother sewed curtains for the fitting area she set up for portrait clients. On opening day, half the town showed up, not because Riverbend Photography Studio was anything remarkable yet, but because they'd watched, over the better part of a year, a woman who'd arrived home looking utterly lost, slowly, carefully, rebuild something entirely her own. Amanda still thought sometimes about the life she'd been living a year earlier. The doorman building, the color-coded calendar, the version of success she'd spent a decade assuming was the only kind worth having. She didn't regret those years exactly. They'd taught her things about discipline and follow-through that she still relied on daily. But she understood now, in a way she couldn't have at 22, that losing everything at once hadn't been the ending she'd feared it was that Tuesday evening in the kitchen. It had been, however painfully, the reset that finally let her build a life that was actually entirely hers, one photograph, one small storefront, one steady morning at a time. If you've ever lost something you thought you couldn't live without, a job, a relationship, a version of yourself you'd built your whole identity around, know this. Sometimes the ending you're afraid of is actually the beginning you never gave yourself permission to want. Second chances rarely look like what we expect, but they're often exactly what we need. If this story reminded you that it's never too late to start over, hit subscribe. We've got more stories like Amanda's waiting for you.